Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be showing you how to make this bubu gown. If it's something you're interested in, keep watching. So to start off, I have my fabrics. I have this liquid mikado. I have about 3.5 yards. We'll be needing 2 yards. I also have 1 yard of my black pattern, but I'll be using just half yard for that, and I also have an elastic and other sewing tools. So the first thing we want to do is to fold our fabric into four. So note that I said I had 3.5 yards of this fabric, but I only need 3 yards for this tutorial. I'm going to be folding this on the wrong side and then adjusting the measurement as I go along. So you're going to fold into two first and then fold into two again, making it 4 folds so that you can have your front and your back pattern. So you're folding this by the width, sorry, considering that this fabric is 60 inches of length and it covers for the length I am working with. So what I did was to fold it up, measure if it was up to what I wanted, adjusted it. So initially I said I had an elastic. I wanted to use an elastic for this for the sleeve of this gown, for this bubu gown, but I decided to change my mind. So if you're using an elastic for yours, you want your fold to be longer so that the length of your sleeve can be longer. So after ensuring that you folded this properly, we're going to start taking our measurements. So I'll start off by ruling my starting line. This is where my measurements will be starting from. So ensure that your folds are actually matching with each other, and go ahead and rule a starting line so that you can start taking the measurements. So after doing that, the next thing I want to indicate is the shoulder measurement. I'm working with half of the shoulder measurement, and then I'm using a neck width of 3.5 inches. Now for my back neck, I'm using 1.5 inches, which I just marked. I'll go ahead and connect that with my curve rule. So for the back, we're just using a simple C neckline. Then for the front, we're going to be using a V-neck. So for the front neck depth, I'll be using 7 inches, and I'll go ahead to connect that with my rule also. So note that you can use any neckline. You can also use a C neckline for the front. Because this dress doesn't have a zip, you want to make your neck wide enough for the head to pass through it without any issues. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the sleeve extension. So remember I said if you want to use an elastic for yours, you want your sleeve to be longer, because every time you add elastics to your sleeve, it actually jumps up. So you need to take note of that. If you add an elastic, I decided not to add an elastic while cutting this in this process. So I went ahead to mark the length I wanted for the sleeve, and at that point I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant, and I'm going ahead to connect it to my neck width. So after doing that, we want to mark the sleeve opening. So this also affects if you're using an elastic. You want your sleeve to be open enough so that your elastic can give you that effect you're looking for. So I used 10 inches for this one. So if you're using an elastic, you want to have more of that. So now that we have that measurement down, the next thing we want to do is to take the body measurement. So you're going to use the bust measurement divided by 4, that is quarter of the bust measurement, and you're going to add about 4 to 5 inches extra. So a bubu gown is usually free. You're going to add 4 to 5 inches extra. 1 inch will be for our joining allowance, and we have the others for the ease of it. So now that I have that, I'm going to just create a sort of curve coming from the armhole area where I marked to that point. So just watch how I'm using this. I'm using my free hand. So ensure that that part is curved, where the lines are meeting is curved, so that by the time you stitch it down, you're not going to have issues. So you can see me contemplating right here. This was actually where I made my decision of not adding an elastic to this after noticing what I had here. Okay. So now that we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is to take the full length of this bubu gown. So your bubu needs to get to the floor for wherever you're making it for. So I'm using 56 inches as my total length, which also includes my hemming allowance. So depending on how tall the person you're making it for, you can also make this to be short, okay? So if you're making this for somebody that wants it short, go ahead and take the measurement for where you want this to end. So I just went ahead to take mine, and then I'm going to make a straight line coming from this point here, from the top to the base. So we'll go in now with our scissors to cut it out. You want to mark where your pocket is going to sit. So your pocket is going to sit 1 inch below your half length. So I'm just going ahead to mark it for this. Now I have that of the back. Now for the back neckline, we're going to fold this up and then trace out the V design which we have for the neckline. Okay, so now that we've achieved that, next we want to work on is the pattern, how to cut this. So now the next thing we want to cut is the pattern design. Go ahead and fold your fabric into two. We're going to just cut out the neckline and the length firstly before we go ahead to construct our design. So I'll draw a line at the top to serve as my starting line. After that, I'll go ahead to mark my neck width of 3.5 inches. The length of 25 inches, and I'll rule a line across. So this length, we're actually going to still work on it, okay? Then I'm going to mark my neck depth for the front, which is 7 inches. So what you have for your front piece, the neck depth has to match with what you have on your pattern, design, so that by the time you attach both of them together, you're not going to make mistakes. So I just connected this to my neck width. Now I'll go ahead to cut this out. Now I'm going to just confirm with my main piece that the neckline, they're matching perfectly. So we have this pattern now which we can use to create a design. So note that you can use any design, you can make any design for your bubu dresses to make them appear unique, but I'm trying to achieve this design as you can see on the thumbnail. So that's what I'm trying to achieve for this bubu dress. So now that I have this, I'm going to do my design on the right side of my fabric, because I actually want to know where I want each design to fall to. So on the shoulder here, this area, I'm going to mark 4 inches. Then I'll also mark same 4 inches on the other side of the shoulders. So these parts, they're going to be joined to our shoulder areas. Okay, so we're going to just mark 4 inches on both sides. Now on this other end here, I will come down from that point. I came down by 7 inches. I'm going to make a straight line to meet what I have at the top. Okay, now from that 7 inches point, I'm going to make an extension outwards by 4 inches again, and I'll connect it with a straight line. So I'm going to make a slanted line going downwards. I actually didn't take the measurement of this part, so I'll say you use about 6 inches to 7 inches for that part, depending on the length you're trying to achieve. And after doing that, I'll come over to the side. I'll also make a straight line going downwards. Okay, at this point, I was actually not taking my measurement again. I was just trying to achieve the pattern you can see on the thumbnail. And then after taking that downwards, I think the length I took on this other end got to about 8 to 9 inches. I'm going to use my curve ruler to achieve the other curve and connect it to this other end. So you can see how I'm doing this. You can't actually freestyle this because that was what I was doing. Okay, and then I used my straight rule at one end also. Okay, so this is what I got initially. This is what I had, and still contemplating on making adjustments on some part of it. So I decided to just um, adjust it a little bit more to what I wanted. Like I said, you can freestyle on this to achieve the type of curve and pattern you want on your boo. So I decided to extend this down, okay, to increase the length more and just curve it downwards. Okay, you can see this is what I did here. So I decided to stick to this way, right? Okay, after looking at it, I was satisfied with what I had and I went ahead to cut it out. So you can just freestyle this. I couldn't actually take measurements. I forgot in the process of doing this to, take measurements. I just decided to just use my hands to go with it. Okay, so now we have our pattern. What we're going to do with this pattern is to we're going to hem it, but before then we're going to cut the pocket for our piece. So the pocket, we need to have 4 pieces for the pocket, and you need to make them wide enough for your hands to pass through. So we're using a freehand method for everything. You just use your hands and then make a mark. So you can see how I'm doing mine for the pocket, and I'm going to measure the opening of my pocket. I'm going to use 7 inches for the opening of my pocket, and I'll pin this down before going ahead to cut. So right now I have 2 pieces of this. I'll use this 2 piece to cut out another 2 piece so that I have 4 of them matching on both sides of the pocket. Okay, so this is one. We're going to cut another set of 2 to make them 4. So now we have our pockets, we have 4 of that. So what we're going to do is to cut a facing for the back piece. You can use a bias, but I advise you use a facing kit because it makes it look neater, especially if you're making the gown you're making anything for a client. I advise you use a facing instead of using a bias to tape the neckline. So I'm just tracing out my facing for my back piece. So this is not going to be long. The length should be 2 inches of an extension, and it should not get too much into the shoulder areas. So we're going to start up with turning the back piece with our facing. Then for our design for the front, what you want to do is to hem it all round. So on the wrong side, go ahead and fold up the wrong side inwards. Okay, fold it up all round this piece before we start doing this. So this is what mine looks like. I went ahead to iron interfacing to my piece because this fabric isn't doesn't have so much weight. Okay, so I went ahead to iron interfacing. I folded it in using my hemming gum so that it stays down. So you can see how this looks like. Ensure to iron it very well so that it's relaxed. Okay, now we're going to bring in the piece that's the main piece of our fabric. We're going to turn this to the wrong side, and then you're going to bring your pattern, that's the design, and place it one side of your main piece of fabric to the right side of your design. Pin them down together at the midpoint of the neckline. Pin them properly. Okay, work with your pins, pin them properly so that it doesn't move, and after pinning them, you go ahead and stitch it together by 1/2 inch. So this is what I have after I finished. This is what it looks like. So I'm going to use my scissors to make marks. Ensure that the marks you're making do not get into your stitched lines. So you're going to make this mark so that by the time you flip it over to iron, it's going to sit well and it is relaxed. So this is what I have. Now I'm going to flip this over to the right side. So this is where you can see how it's already relaxing because of the marks we made. We're yet to iron this. So what we're going to do is to take this to the ironing table, give this a really good press. You're also going to use your hemming gum on the edges of your pattern so that you can hold it in place, okay, so that it sticks to the main piece of fabric. We're going to do all that and I'll come back and show you. So this is what mine looks like after I finished. I went ahead to stitch on top of my pattern again. So you're going to use a matching thread. So you can see, you cannot see the lines, you cannot see the thread difference between this. So use a matching thread to do that, so that that's like a two-factor so that it doesn't pull out in the long run. You can see how nice this looks. Okay, see how it looks like on the wrong side of the fabric because I used a matching thread. So next thing I'm going to do is to attach my pocket to the piece. Remember, I've already made notches. You're going to just attach your pocket to the sides. So I have done that. I also attached it to the back side, and I've also turned my neckline for the back piece with my facing, and I used my hemming gum to hold it down. Now I'm going to align the shoulder areas, placing them right side to right side. You can also use your pins around these areas, okay, and then go ahead and stitch by half of an inch. So I've done that, and I ironed open the seam around that area so that it's easier to interlock later on. Now around this area, if you're adding an elastic, you want to fold your sleeve hem in a way that you have an elastic casing for your elastic to pass through. So if you're using half of an inch elastic, you want to fold and have a space about 3/4 of an inch. So I'll just go ahead and hem this since I'm not adding an elastic to this, so you can see how this looks like after I finish. Now what I'm going to do is to arrange the sides together. So at this area, please pin it down, okay? Use your pins to pin it down so that it's matching. Pin from the armhole areas into the pockets down to the ends, okay? Don't be don't be shy to work with your pins, okay? You're not a carpenter, you're a tailor. All right, so make use of your pins, pin them down the sides, the pockets, ensure that everywhere they are aligning perfectly. Pin both sides, pin them down, okay? So I went ahead to do that. Now from the ends here, we're not going to be stitching to the full length. So from the ends, I'm coming up by 10 inches, and I'll make a mark at that 10 inches point. So that's where I'm going to stitch to. I'll stop my stitching at that end. I'm making this marking on both sides. So you can take yours higher depending on how much slits you want for your gown. So I'm making this for an elderly person, so this works perfectly. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch it down. So you're going to stitch from the armhole by 1 inch, stitch from the armhole into the pocket. By the time you get into the pocket, you're going to stitch by half of an inch into the pocket, come out by 1 inch again, and then stop at the point we marked. So you do that for both sides. This is what it looks like after I finished doing mine. So now that we have this opening here, so what you want to do is to interlock your dress first before you go ahead to hem the ends. So you're going to interlock them first properly, and then you go ahead to use a hemming gum to hold up this open area here, or you stitch. So I advise to use stitching instead because it's going to make it look nicer. And then ensure to use a matching thread. Okay, matching thread works perfectly so that they're not appearing odd. So use a matching thread, and then you go ahead to do that. So this is what it looks like on the right side. You can see that the sleeve areas is not folding. That's because while stitching the armhole area, I did not go too deep into it. Like I said, ensure to interlock the ends first and then fold that up, stitch it down, okay? Then after doing that, you go ahead and hem the base. So I'll go ahead and do all this and show you the final look. So this is what it looks like after I finish. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.